Chapter 14. Coop's End. A damn smart man that I can't remember the name of right now said, "There comes a time when you have to make a decision. You either lie down and get busy dying, or you haul your ass up and get to fighting." Arno Cooper. It had been a week, and still the pup moped, barely touched her food, and refused to play with her brother. At present, she was lying near Coop's feet, staring at the bend in the road where she had seen the girls disappear from sight. Her brother was pulling on her ear with his sharp teeth and trying like hell to get her to play, but the girl pup wouldn't budge. Coop saw the writing on the wall. The pup had given her heart to that Jessie, and there wasn't anything to be done about it, except send her on her way. He smiled as he thought of it. This one was worth a lot. She had the right instincts to be one of the best hunting dogs he had ever bred. Lord knows he had been breeding them long enough to know. She was young, but damned smart. Annie, the pup's dam, was the only one of Coop's dogs to survive when the troops blew through town. She had been out with Coop, checking lines and rooting out pheasants. Annie and the old man had returned to chaos. The rest of the dogs dead, Tiffany missing, the trailer a jumbled mess, and their entire stash of canned food gone. Except the beets. Seems no one wanted the beets. Damn fools. Coop smiled at the thought. He liked beets. A couple of months later, Annie disappeared for a few days. Several weeks after she returned, it became obvious she was knocked up. Coop chuckled at the irony that for all his careful breeding, Annie had apparently found just the right mix of wild seed. All three of the pups she had born in this litter were exceptional. One boy pup had been snatched up by the walkers, and Fane Brooks was coming for the last boy pup today. Coop reached down and petted the little girl's ears. "I should have sent you with her when they left." The pup whined sadly. "Hands down, girl, you're the best I got." The pup did not respond, just continued to stare down the road. His rough hand slowly undid the collar from the pup's neck. Dozens of pups had worn this old leather collar, but none of them had been quite like this one. It seemed fitting somehow, considering what he was planning on doing. The pup looked up at him, tail slowly thumping. "Go on with you." He pointed towards the road. "You got a long road ahead of you if you're going to catch up with him, so's you best get started." Annie gave her daughter one sharp bark of encouragement. For the first time in over a week, the girl pup looked excited and alive. She looked up at Coop and back at her dam, then turned and ran towards the road. She stopped for a moment, stared back at the trailer and its inhabitants, wagged her tail, put her nose to the ground, and then disappeared round the bend and on into the trees. About an hour later, Fane Brooks showed up. He was a small man with dark hair, pale blue eyes, and sunburnt skin. He was Coop's cousin, 3 times removed. Around these parts, if your family stayed around for long, and most did, eventually everyone was related to everyone else. "Hey, Coop, what you know?" The old man just grunted and pointed to Annie. She was lying on the ground a few yards away, not so patiently enduring her son's industrious attempts to get her to play. The boy pup tugged on one of her ears, which earned him a short growl and a quick snapping of teeth to show her displeasure. "I need a full pack of jerky and any dried fruit you got," Coop replied, staring at his prize hounds, "and every box of ammo you can spare." Fane looked pissed. "Now look here, Coop, you know we ain't got much. That's asking an awful damn lot for one little pup that ain't even proven himself." The old man didn't even look up. "That's for everything, not just the pup." "What the hell you talking about, old-timer? What everything?" Coop looked over at the younger man. "The dogs, both of 'em, the trailer, the land, most of my traps, and whatever else you want." The silence stretched on as Fane tried to stare Cooper down. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. He finally broke. "God damn it, Coop, no, this won't bring her back. Scott is still out there. What's he gonna do when he comes back from the army? Find y'all gone with no one left?" Fane shook his head. "Think about how he'd feel, old man, with his whole family gone. The old man interrupted. "Scott didn't join the army." He looked down at the ground. That boy ain't got a home to come back to after what he done." The younger man gaped at Coop in shock. No matter how bad Scott had acted up in years past, the old man had always shown him a patience and understanding that belied the crusty old-timer image that Coop had cultivated so well over the years. Coop continued, "He joined 'em, the Western Front. He joined 'em willingly, and he was one of the bastards that tried to—" His voice broke. Tiffany was his sister, his own blood." He sat for a moment, body shaking. "I thought I could set it to rest, but I can't. I'm going to that camp, and I'm going to finish him and as many more as I can. That's just the way it is, Fane. So you take Annie and that pup, and you take good care of 'em, you hear?" Fane just stood there in shock, unable to form words. Finally he nodded, reached out a hand, and grasped the old man's shoulder. "I'll take the dogs now, come back with a full pack for you. You leaving first thing in the morning?" "Yep." "I'll bring it by at first light." Fane's wife, Connie, went ballistic when she heard about Coop's plans the next day at breakfast. Fane had gone out at first light with a full pack of food and 3 boxes of shells that they really couldn't spare. He'd given it all to Coop and watched the old man take US-13, turn a bend, and disappear from sight. Annie had gone crazy, pulling at the lead and trying like hell to break free. Fane calmed her down as best he could. She was a fine hound, but her heart belonged to Coop. As he fought to keep the dog in line, his thoughts turned to his kids. Mick was turning 12 soon. Emmy was just 6 years old. Fane's stomach clenched at the thought of what this war could do to them in the years to come, and wished the old man well. He didn't tell her the truth about Coop's boy. That was something he just couldn't fathom. How could that boy join the Western Front? He'd always seemed a bit cold. The girls thought he was devilishly handsome, and Fane had to agree on the devilish part of it. Still, the idea that he had joined the Western Front? It was like suggesting you join the Union when you lived in the South, or like joining Al-Qaeda after losing your family in the Twin Tower bombing. It was crazy. Some part of him feared that if he said it aloud, it would make it real. He may never have liked the boy, but damn, he wouldn't have expected this out of him. Besides, Connie had babysat Scott when she was a teenager, and she'd always had a soft spot for the kid. Fane just sat and stared at his scrambled eggs and let Connie rant about the stupidity of old men. When that didn't work, she pleaded with Fane to get on the road, catch up to Coop, and talk some sense into the old man, but her husband was unmoved. "He's got a right, Connie. He's got to do this, and I expect he'll be back. 'Member he was some badass in Nam. I hear tell he had something like 158 kills. Shit, but that old man was legend back in the day." Swearing earned him a small annoyed smack on the back of his head from his wife. Only 5 foot tall, Connie was a spitfire, and she didn't like swearing. God help Mickey and Emmy if they let loose anything they had picked up in the schoolyard. She had thrashed Mick good after he had uttered Jesus Christ within earshot. Connie was a deeply religious woman, and she did not cotton to profanity of any kind. Fane knew the chances of the old man coming back weren't good. Not at all, but if it calmed down Connie, well, she'd come around to an understanding of it later. That night, she was so angry at Fane, she made him sleep on the couch. Despite the fact that he could feel every spring and every lump in the aged thing, he slept well, feeling safe, well away from his angry little wife. By nightfall on the first day, Coop made it almost 7 miles before he stopped and pitched a tent. By his reckoning, it would take 2, maybe 3 days of hard walking before he reached the camp. In the end, it took him nearly a week and a half. He twisted his ankle crossing a river. 2 of the bridges had been torn out, and his arthritis slowed him down considerably. The last night of Coop's life found him camped without a fire. He didn't even set up the tent. He was so close that he could hear men calling to each other in the enemy camp as he oiled hinges and sharpened the teeth of his snares and traps, all of them. Coop's traps, snares, and guns killed and maimed a lot of men early that morning. He had been a sniper in Vietnam, brought in on the tail end of the Tet Offensive. He had lost his cherry, in more ways than one, near Khe-Sun. Arno Cooper had been one of the best snipers the Army had ever had. But time catches up to us all. 34 minutes after the first shot had been fired, 28 men lay dead. One of those 28 was a good and honest man. Captain Scott Cooper stood over old Coop's lifeless body, the Glock 40's barrel still smoking. There was not a trace of emotion in his handsome face, no recognition or acknowledgement of the man he had once called Pops in his pale blue eyes. He ran a hand through his coal-black hair, removed a stray leaf, and walked away from the old man's body without a backward glance.